This episode is sponsored by Hypervac Technologies, tools that make you better.
Welcome back to Western Synergy. My name is Nathan Johnson, and I've been talking to people all across Western Canada, entrepreneurs, innovators, just generally really interesting people. I'm joined today by Colin Harms. Thank you for taking some time to join us.
Yeah, for sure, Nathan. I'm Colin Harms, as you said. I'm one of the partners in Hypervac Technologies. We acquired this company in 2021, and since then we've just more or less evolved into what it is today. We purchased a really great company, and to us, the best thing about it was it had very few systems in place, and that's where our strengths are, is putting systems in place and watching them grow and turning it into a fluid motion, if you will.
So when you came to look at this company, you just saw lots of opportunity here to improve what the already existing was working well.
Yeah, that's right. We look at it like they invented the wheel and we just redefined it. We didn't want to reinvent it, but we redefined it and, polish the edges and make things better. It was a leading company in the industry as it was, but we like to refer to it as the best of the worst, right? We look at our competition like they're competition and they're good for us, but nobody was really doing a great job from our viewpoint. And so we just kind of wanted to perfect that if we could.
What drew you to kind of look at Hypervac as an acquisition, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a interesting story. I have a real estate brokerage, and I was meeting with my accountant for year end. And right at the end of it, I always ask him the same question is, do you have any clients that want to sell a company, retire, divest, whatever? And he said, well, I do have one. And I said, well, what's his story? He said, well, he just really doesn't like the wind. And he's been doing this. He just turned 50 and he's been doing this since he's 15.
Oh, wow.
And I said, well, what is it that he does? And he manufactures air vac trucks. And I said, I have no idea what that is. Do you have his phone number? Mm-hmm. And so he gave me his phone number, not thinking I would contact him. I called him from the parking lot and drove straight out there. And so I took a tour. It was a much smaller facility. Like I said, no systems, but very, very intriguing. And I still had no idea what it was. So I'd called a client of mine who was looking for a business and said, I think we could partner up on something here. And can I come get you? And so I did. And 6 months later, we owned the business.
That's really cool. So like from real estate to manufacturing, technically? Yeah. So we'll keep going back until we figure out how you came out, right? So how real estate to manufacturing?
So to me, it was, I work a lot on myself and wanted to be very diverse and be open to, hey, what's the next opportunity? Real estate is very wide, I guess. But it at the same time, if you're in Southern Alberta, you're somewhat closed into the market. Mm-hmm. So I was looking at something different. And with real estate also, I have a background. I worked for a public company for 17 years in the solid waste and recycling. So that doesn't sound very exciting, but it's very profitable. And I learned a lot of business principles from that company. And so I just thought, you know what, why don't we go at it? It's something new. I'm a sales background and business development. So I thought, well, I can take that part of the business. And then my business partner, John, he's very technical and analytical. And I thought, well, it's probably a great fit. And he was looking for something. I was looking for something. And here we are.
Clearly, I'm guessing you have the, kind of the entrepreneurial bug / spirit, infection, whatever you want to call it, because it sounds like you've kind of always been making those moves. So maybe could you tell us, tell our audience a little bit back about, kind of earlier life, what were you doing before kind of real estate, jumping to Hypervac and clearly, solid waste and other little adventures? What were you doing beforehand? How'd you get here?
Yeah, for sure. I can give you a snapshot. I started working in restaurants in high school, and I really wanted to own a restaurant. And then as I started in management, I saw, for me, that wasn't the thing. 7 days a week, 364 days a year, less than 10% profit didn't really add up. So I had an opportunity from the restaurant to start selling food for a distributor that sold to us. I applied for a job and I got it. And I just became a food sales rep, if you will. It was really good for me, and I loved it. I loved the sales aspect. People wouldn't find it too fun. I was selling tomatoes and peppers and meat, but I was producing a great income. Like I did really well at it, and it was really good for me. And back then, let's go back to 1998, prior to Kijiji or any of those online hiring portals, I guess. Went to the newspaper. So I read this ad, and it said, become a salesman in the garbage industry. And I said, well, that sounds pretty cool. So I applied for a job, and I ended up getting the job. It was less money than I was making, but I looked at the industry, and I said, this is a massive industry. What does every household, every business have? It's garbage. And so I took the job, and I started working for the company, it was BFI at the time. Beautiful part of that business was if you worked hard, you were promoted. So I went from a sales rep there selling garbage literally to becoming a district manager and senior management in the company and working in mergers and acquisitions and kind of all types and traveling around Alberta and BC. It was very exciting. And, after 17 years, the company had been acquired a number of times, and I just worked my way through. And in the last one, there was no position for me. So after that, I just went full out real estate.
No, I definitely have the sales background. One of the things that I always recommend when, people are helping their kids find first jobs, any public facing job where even hospitality is a good one, sales, any of those teach kids and people coming up unbelievable skills, because for the rest of your life, doesn't matter what you get into, whether it be a technical, manufacturing, commercial, hospitality, it doesn't matter. You're selling, you're going to be selling. So clearly I can see from the background that you have that, you can kind of go in on industries and just take a look at it and break that down. So I'm guessing that all the sales skills that you've had over this long time have probably done well for you here at Hypervac.
Yeah, for sure. That's one of the first things I came in was I'd never worked on an international basis. And in the Hypervac was 85% U.S. business. And I thought, well, that's exciting. And then I'm going to have to learn the product that we manufacture. So I immersed myself in it. Right? I just got in and I wanted to learn as much as I possibly can. I find myself, I'm a quick learner. And I was interested in the industrial part of it. And it didn't take long. The interesting thing was we took possession of the company February 1st, 2021. 1 month later, COVID hit.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So that was not a sink or swim situation, but it certainly was, what the heck are we going to do now? And how are we going to figure this thing out? And it was probably the best thing that could have ever happened for us. It just boots on the ground, picking up phones, right? And figuring it out. And weren't able to cross the border, weren't able to visit customers. Everything had to be done over the phone. The scary part was we were new to the industry. The industry knew it. They heard there was new owners, and they knew that we didn't have a background in that industry. So we just had to sharpen our skills. And
so going back to kind of the doing this in the beginning of COVID, there's the ongoing cliche that, if you learn to swim with a brick, you'll be the best swimmer or you'll drown, one of the two. But do you mind sharing maybe a couple more things that happened during COVID that you guys did that gave you that resiliency, or, where when you said boots on the ground, can you give maybe talk a little bit more about that? Because I find it's always, it's the cliche that when, doesn't kill you makes you stronger, but that's not necessarily the truth. There's tactic and skill that go into not getting killed.
Well, the biggest thing was the supply chain, right? Supply chain was shutting down. Manufacturers, vendors were retooling to produce different items, that type of thing. We had to find out where things come from, how we get them. And so it was picking up the phone and finding out. So the scary part was day one, the number one thing we need is a cab chassis because we upfit a body to that. we had heard that manufacturers were going to stop building. People weren't going to be able to come to work. They were going to retool for different things. Obviously, they thought there wouldn't be a market for them, right? Everybody's going to be at home. We don't know how long it's going to go on for. So literally, the cab chassis, the truck business shut down. They weren't manufacturing anymore. Previous to us, it was a matter of they pick up the phone, they deal with a vehicle broker. This is what we need or what the customer needs, and they ship it. So I said, well, shoot, what am I going to do? I hit the internet and I just started making calls. So I would think back then I probably, made 1,500 calls to various dealerships across North America, introduce our business, tell them what we do. Here's what we're looking for. And it was great. We ended up really building a great network and having a huger or a wider, more diverse avenue to pull from. And so we just kept doing that. I kept making the calls. I was the only one. There was nobody else. Previous, they had a great network, and that network had shut down. So we kept doing that. What happened was our competition didn't do that. They just kind of said, well, we'll fold our hands together and see what happens. So traditionally back then, when we bought the company, if you called and you wanted to order a truck or we were working with you, it was 4 to 6 to 8 months to get a truck, and that was acceptable. And I had sat with my business partner and said, well, how about we turn that around and we become a dealership model and we pre-build bodies and we have trucks in stock. So when they call, we say, well, you could have it on Tuesday, right? A little bit shock and awe. And
yeah, big time compression there.
Yeah, the previous owner said that'll never happen. You'll go broke. Don't pre-build. You don't know if people will order, that type of thing. And we just said, well, I guess we're going to, right? So at the time we went from, 4 to 6 to 8 month production time to we pre-built 17 bodies. And fortunately, we kept selling. We kept reaching out, and people were dumbfounded. They were like, what are you talking about? Like, how can you have them built? We said, well, we're changing the model. We just told them straight out, we're going to change the way the industry, what they accept. And what they accepted previously to us wasn't acceptable, right? We said, we do live in an Amazon world. So if you call today or you order, you literally should be able to have something headed your way within a few days. And so that's what we've done.
Well, that's it's really kind of an important thing when you're talking to people about making changes is that, you're talking months down to days, right? And that's, probably like 10 to 30x improvement. And something that I always try to iterate back to people that are talking about business is that if you go in and you're making a change, if the change isn't like 5x at a minimum, you probably should question it quite a lot. So anything less than 5x. So if you're asking like, how is this process going? And someone says like, oh, it's a 6 or 7 out of 10, you got to be pretty careful because it's going to be pretty hard to make a 9 or a 10 out of 10 solution. And to be honest, most companies cannot produce 10 out of 10 solutions. There isn't perfect solutions. Most companies, if they're hitting 9s, are the leader of the pack. So it's really interesting hearing how you guys went and took a look at this and said, let's take a look at a risk. Like, that's a pretty decent risk, especially these aren't shelvable, throw it on the rack. If they collect some dust, we'll sell it later. These are full on vehicles. So, kudos to you. That's like a really impressive story because it is important for people to understand that if you aren't changing, and you need to know what change is, 1x, 3x, that's improvement. That's like optimization. But 5 to 10, now you're getting into the change that people will see and notice and pay attention to, right? So I'm guessing that there's a pretty big impact from this.
Yeah, and like even in year 1 and year 2, as our customers, and new customers were coming on the scene, it was a little shock and awe because they weren't ready for it. They would budget out, what are we going to do in the next year or the next quarter? And we said, well, we could deliver it on Friday. And once we've done that, we've won over customers that use a different vendor for 25 years. We've won them over just like that. Like it's an immediate win. And then within that, we knew the quality had to be there, right? How can we improve on what we had? How can we, make a name in the marketplace? And we just continued to do it and refine it and listen to our customers. COVID gave us a great break in the market, I guess, to talk to our customers and say, hey, like if we could do things different, what would you like to see? And so we did that, right? We just listened and learned and changed, on the go. It was kind of shift on the fly. Okay, this wasn't working, but they had sales previously. Okay, well, what would really happen if we listened and made the changes? So we hear every week now, how the changes have affected our customer. It's a service industry we're selling to. So if you purchase a truck and you're in the field and you're working and you go down, that's spent money, right? You're losing money right from the get-go. And how long does it take you to get back up? If we can prevent that from happening, right, we'll win every time.
Absolutely. So before I have a couple of questions rolling in my head, but the one I want to ask you about is that, so you guys definitely faced some challenges. You overcame them. You definitely took on some risk. It's a lot of success. Could you talk maybe more about the harder parts? So maybe the parts where you maybe didn't catch it, or things where you're like, that was a challenge that took quite a while, or something along the lines of, more on the other side of the fence. Where were the things that kind of cut you a bit?
The business was set up so that it was almost all third-party vendors. Very little was done in-house with the exception of some assembly, that type of thing. And that brought us to, we were waiting 3 months. Like, we really had to project into the future, material purchasing, pre-purchasing body parts, that type of thing. Where it hit us was supply chain, because we could somewhat predict what we needed, but I can't predict what you needed. If you're a vendor of mine, how do I know that you're going to be able to, when we order, have that part, or, supply what we need? So that was the biggest thing. We sat down and said, we need a backup of 3 vendors for every single part that we buy. And then we need a even then, it sounds ridiculous. We still need a backup, because, when that ship turned in the canal there, that was something that affected us. And we really were afraid. I guess we were afraid. We said, we told the customer, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're changing things. And it's kind of like the swan analogy, right? It's pretty. It's sitting on top of the water, and its little legs are going nuts under the water. That was real for us, but we just kept pushing.
Okay.
Right? And I'll give you a great example. One of our engine suppliers said, we're just shutting down. You won't be getting any engines for a year. And we said, well, that actually doesn't work for us, because that's a big component of our truck.
Mm-hmm.
And so my business partner contacted them and said, can I talk to somebody higher up? And he did. And he said, well, what will it take for us to get a year's supply? I said, well, nobody buys a year's supply. If we did that, that's a full day run on the line, and it's Briggs & Stratton, so it's not a small company. And he said, okay. So we chatted, and we said, well, let's buy a year's supply. So they agreed, and they shipped us a year's supply. We had to buy it.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other end of it, which, I think it took us 6 or 7 months to get it, but then we had another future year ahead of us that we could continue operating. What happened then, we had other vendors calling us to want to purchase those engines because nobody else could get them, right? So we stayed ahead of the supply chain.
You do really have to take a look at the future of what you create, not the future you've sort of like lived through. Like a common analogy is that, I've heard some people talk about how food scarcity is going to be a problem in the future for myriad of reasons, right? Like if the population continues to grow, we're not going to have enough food. But I don't think what people look at is that they look at the past, that the sheer amount of calories the planet produces, now versus 50, 100
Mm-hmm.
years ago is completely a different thing. And so the assumption is going into the future, like when you're saying we're going to pick up this big load of motors, everyone's like, oh, that's a huge risk. Well, it is a huge risk if you take no effort to sell them.
That's right.
The idea is that as you go forward and you have plans and strategies and there's a thought process to it, it can quickly turn into something amazing and glorious. And that's why I think when it comes down to risk, it's just, how much calculation and effort do you have available to kind of understand that. So no, I completely love the stories, and I definitely, as you talk to more and more people, it's the, we share what works well,
Mm-hmm.
but we generally talk about how we did well and survived the things that didn't, because that's what a business is. A business is, they don't look at things as, successes or failures. They just look at them as a series of events, and you just deal with them, whether it's a success or a failure in your mind, but it's not. It's just an event. Something happened. You can interpret it however you want, or you can act.
Mm-hmm.
So if you get something that you classify as a success, well, what do you do with that? Do you then just stop and take off to a beach?
Yeah.
Or do you keep the train going? And if you run into something that's considered kind of a failure, do you then, throw your hands up in the air and call your friends and complain? Or do you deal with it, right? It's sort of, to me, like firefighters, right? Like they start with what everyone would consider failure, a building on fire. But their job is it's an event. They are trying to create the best scenario out of that. And that's why I like talking to you, is it's been really kind of fascinating, because it's that exact thing where you're like, it's an event. We dealt with it. We kept moving. Every single thing kind of goes into that category. And it's something that I try to really convey across to the people that are working with myself and people that are looking to get into it.
I've never thought of it that way, and I love that analogy of everything's just an event. I think I'm going to use that going forward, like starting this afternoon.
So that's trademark. You owe me about $50,000
every day or just once. Either way.
Yeah, either way. We'll work out the details later. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. But I do love that analogy, because it's so easy to live by. And if we just think that way, and I'm a big believer, a faith believer, in things happen for the right reason. And yeah, absolutely, things go wrong, and we take a right turn, should have taken a left turn. But the only one that can correct that is us.
Yeah.
Right. So as long as we stay on track and know where we're headed, I don't think nothing really throws us off that far.
Yeah.
And just even speaking now with some things going on in our market, 85% of our business is U.S. And there's a little word called tariffs that everyone's talking about. And it's honestly, it's just not scaring us. It's even if we did get slapped with the tariff, we'll work around it. Mm-hmm. Right? There's another way. And I look at things like they're cyclical, right? If we go back, and I use Warren Buffett just to myself all the time, is, what would Warren Buffett say? And he would say, everything's a cycle, right? Even if you go back to, past World War I to current date, things cycle, right? And they'll come around. But like you said, if you go bury your head in the sand, for sure, you're not going to win. Right. By the time you pull your head out, it's probably too late.
Or if you sit there and wait, like the thing is, lots of people hear that term where they're like, it's a cycle, and people will be like, oh, the cycle started. I'm going to sit still and wait for it to go away, right, and I'll jump back in when it's good. And the problem with it is that the people that don't do that end up building up resilience and speed during that cycle that you'll never be able to compete with when the cycle ends, because those people are going to come out the other side, not even in the same category as you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So to me, regardless of industry,
yeah,
I just think that's a mindset that can be adopted by anybody.
Kind of coming back to the idea that you were mentioning there, that 80% of your business comes out of the United States. So if I could ask, like, we're in Western Canada, it's given, myself, you, the team that's building this podcast, all our opportunities. This is where we are, and we appreciate that. What do you think it would take to kind of up your market share in Canada? Like, is there anything that's going on that makes it so, like, again, the United States is 10 times our size, so I understand that the market share is bigger, but is there anything that's going on in Canada, or things that you guys are kind of give us the reason why it's such a big shift? Like, as a Canadian company, why are you getting so much business not in Canada?
Yeah, good question. I think on our end, we need to do a better job of penetrating the market, getting out there, showing them who we are and what we can do. As you said, the U.S. is so large and it's easy, right? You can throw a dart and it's going to stick somewhere. Mm-hmm. The difficult part of that is getting complacent, right? Because you can just say, well, there's 50 states, there's enough business out there. We want to look at the Western Canada and the prairie provinces, and how do we get in there? And that's get out there and talk to people.
Yeah, and I think it would be good maybe for our technical viewers just to talk a little bit about your guys' main product.
Yeah, this is what we call our H2 air duct truck. So H2 being second edition, second generation. It's an air duct truck, so it's designed to improve your indoor air quality. So this truck will pull up to your house or business. It's designed with a very powerful vacuum system. It's going to, the operator will go in your house or your business. He'll hook up to your HVAC system, and he will, what we call a push-pull system. He's going to use compressed air to agitate the dust and the particles in your ducts, and he's going to push them in, and then he's going to pull them out. And so he's going to suck them into the truck. So most people are familiar. They've seen a truck or a trailer with these bags in the air. And that's what's happening, right? We're creating a negative air situation in the house, and then we're going to suck the dust into the truck.
And so when you say a negative air situation in the house, do you mean like the whole home?
Correct.
Okay, so
Yeah.
if someone's running, say, this process, it's a little bit more than the duct cleaning, so they could potentially be sucking up agitated dust throughout the whole entire home?
Yeah, anything that's gone into the duct system
Okay.
will be, because what they're going to do is mask off all the registers, any open area like that, because when you're blowing in the air, you could create quite a mess.
Mm-hmm.
So that masks it off, and then we're just going to suck it out. And so we have a inspection camera proprietary to us that we had designed. So it will go in as you're blowing the air into the ducts, and the camera follows it in, and we can show you the entire job being done from front to back.
And so to our audience, the end users, what are the main benefits your vehicles provide? So if you had to pitch, say, beyond the duct cleaning services, because I think a lot of our audience has been called and said, hey, can we do duct cleaning? Also, the HVAC companies offer that service for yearly maintenance and things like that. What's kind of the pitch that goes a little bit above and beyond for your guys' unit?
Traditionally, people would use a PTO-driven truck. So everything from the cab back is operated on its own. The truck's not running in your driveway, that type of thing.
Yeah, so for our audience, just to clarify, PTO stands for power takeoff. It means
Correct.
that the engine in the front of the vehicle that also drives the vehicle is then shared through shafts and gearboxes into the back of it.
Correct.
Yeah, okay.
So essentially, if they were at your house for 2 or 3 hours, that truck would be running in your driveway or in front of your house for 3 hours. This is running on its own. It has its own engine, has what's called a trans-fluid coupler acting like a transmission. And then what matters to us is fan size. So it has a 21-inch fan. We've worked with our engineers on that, on the degree of the blades to create the best suction possible. So our trucks are rated at about 13,500 CFM. And that's really the rating what the industry wants to see, right? I mean, or what they're concerned with. The number one reason why our customers prefer our trucks is, if you look at it traditionally, and still other trucks will have just a large metal box that the dust comes back into. They have to shovel it out, and it makes just as much mess coming out of the truck as it did going in. Our truck, we have a blue cleanout container you'll see in there. So the bags go up, the air goes into each of the bags and then falls into a plenum as it's coming down, the sediment, and it's separated into its own cleanout container. So then you have a bag in there, a trash bag. You just tie it up and throw it out.
Okay, so then for operators, then for the people going and doing this job,
That's
it's
right.
a lot more convenient and maintainable.
That's right. And you can show your customer too, we're not fleecing America. You can see the dust that's come out of their house and into the truck. And the other thing is, one of the sell points, about 80% of our trucks are weighted under 10,000 pounds. So they're not a commercial vehicle.
Oh, wow, that's huge.
It is huge,
Yeah.
right? For registration, for insurance, that type of thing. And that's why we were talking about earlier about aluminum. We use an aluminum body. It doesn't rust. The weight is lighter, and then it's powder coated.
So you don't need any special type of license to be able to drive this unit?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, just a class 5. One of our strengths is listening to the customer, hearing how things could be easier done. So you'll see the height of our truck as well. We try to do everything from a standing height. So you open the top bag door from the ground. You also close it from inside the truck. You don't have to crawl around on top, safety issues, things like that. The only time you'd be on top of the truck is if you're doing maintenance, which would be in a closed environment or in your own environment. So not in a customer's driveway, that type of thing. And then aesthetics.
So kind of talking a little more, I know there's also kind of peppered around this facility is these little gray guys. And I think there would be one in the background of mine, and they're everywhere.
If you want to see one, take a look.
And here they are. So I actually remember selling motors for these to the previous owner in my past life.
Okay.
Yeah. So I saw a couple. So for our audience, I used to be a general manager of an electromechanical shop, and we used to sell, and I think either sell or help with warranty on the driving motor inside of this thing. So I saw a couple of these in our shop, but to tell you the truth, I didn't really know what they are. So,
Right.
this is
Yeah.
where we get to learn.
Sure. So it's perfect placement because essentially this is a mini truck, right? So it's what we call the Revolution Hybrid. So it's a portable that was designed, they had an RFP for the jail, and the jail in there, the stipulation was they could not use a truck because they could not have hose opening doors and leaving doors unlocked, that type of thing. So the previous owner went down, sketched out something on a napkin and said, I need to create a portable vacuum that they'll be able to use. Hence the Revolution Hybrid. So what this is, I could wheel this right into your house and hook it up. It's electric. I could hook it up to your system the same way I would a truck and essentially clean it the same way. It's very usable for apartment buildings, for condos, for tight, high density residential where trucks just don't fit. Customers will use these. And the benefit of this is it's a 220 volt with a variable drive. So you can dial it down so you're not, blowing breakers or whatever the power capacity of the property is. With a variable drive, it'll go anywhere from 3,000 to 5,000 CFM. So it does a phenomenal job. Also, very well used in commercial settings. If you're a gym or a restaurant, they'll put it on a scissor lift and they can go straight up to the ductwork, with high ceilings, say a Costco or a Walmart, that type of thing. So they're used and literally sold all over the world coming out of Western Canada here.
Okay. And so this one that you guys are making is like, this make a pretty big part of your company?
It is.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you guys manufacture these, correct?
We do, yeah. Actually, the casing, the rotomold is made right here in Lethbridge as well.
Yeah.
So that's the entire casing is made from a company here in Lethbridge. The rest of it, we source the parts and we assemble everything here. And they're 100% are shipped out of this facility.
So being a business here in Western Canada, what would be kind of the things that you would recommend to anyone that's looking into running a company here?
I think Western Canada, the number one benefit is geographical, where it is. Just from the input and output or import export, however you want to say it, we're in a great spot in Western Canada, right? There's just the way the goods come and go. It's phenomenal for shipping both ways. And when you're a manufacturing company, it's all about shipping. It's like 80% shipping. How's it going to get here or how's it going to get wherever we're shipping it to? I think Western Canada really needs to be highlighted for that. There's just so many good attributes that are around here for that. And also the business aspect of it. There's a very open business mind in Western Canada that we see. We love dealing with people around here and Canada for that matter. Canadians are, I find, generally happy people, and in business that helps, right? So yeah, I see our future even just in the Western provinces here. We work good together and it's cohesive. It works well for us.
I really appreciate you taking all this time to really educate us on that, everything that is Hypervac, and share your story and go and talk about all these different subjects. It's been just amazingly interesting to have this conversation.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. Again, I'm Nathan Johnson. This has been another episode of Western Synergy, and I look forward to talking to you guys all next time.